is a product and AI leader who helps organizations close the strategy execution gap with real, measurable performance.
Everyone, please give a warm welcome to the Director and Product Strategy Consultant at Profit.co, Karthick Nethaji.
I'm going to talk about how we are solving this problem for our customers with a bunch of real-time case studies. So I'm Nethaji. I'm Director of Products in Profit. I lead the transformation of project suite of solutions in Profit. I also lead the project consulting practice in Profit. And over the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through a timeline. Let's say every one of us being here as a project professionals need to wear multiple hats, do a lot of stakeholder management. And that's what I'm going to walk you through in terms of a timeline journey. All right, let's dive in for it. I really need to start with one single number that should really concern all of us as a project management professionals. $2 trillion. That's the amount of annual wastage being done on projects that are not strategically aligned. If you're still circling around how many zeros to quantify the impact of this, let me give you one example. Let's say like we wake up on one fine morning just to realize that an entire country, Canada, has been wiped out of the world map. It's not a joke, right? That's the GDP of Canada itself. That's the amount of wastage that we have been doing on just because of unaligned strategic projects. Right? So how do we solve that? Prior to that, why does this happening even? I would say there are 4 fundamental disconnects. We've been talking about value, 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 but until otherwise you connect your projects to the strategy, the value is not going to happen. But where does the strategy live? That's a boardroom thing. It sits in a pretty fancy PowerPoint presentation, right? And you talk about the execution, the core projects. That lives in spreadsheet predominantly, or probably in Microsoft Planner or some kind of a tools. You find a lot of effort to connect them together, and by the time when you did that, the market dynamics change. You're trying to look at what's the plan that you have done like 5-6 months back, and you're trying to reassess yourself. And lastly, again, connecting back to more, what is it, the true success of a project? It's not just saying that I delivered the projects on time. Did it really move the business KPI needle or not? Those are the 4 fundamental disconnects we have been talking about, right? So those are the 4 problems. And if you ask me, okay, how do we solve it? We saw more as a concept. Now I'm going to talk about a practical framework. How are we solving this in real life for our customers? It's SPM, Strategic Portfolio Management. So it depends upon, if you're dealing at the project level, it's a strategic project management. But if it is a bunch of projects, then it's a strategic portfolio management. The only good thing is that this is a standardized, accredited term. This is coined out by Gartner, which has been practiced by leading enterprises. So we're not going to look at something new. This is something which has been in practice already. 4 solutions, because we have 4 problems. Ultimately, we're going to start with strategic alignment, but let's run into the timeline story again. You are a project manager. You really, really need to handle a multiple bunch of people. So let's start with this strategic alignment. And this is where you really need to connect with the strategy office closely. I'm talking about a real-time case study wherein one of our customers in North America, it's a big financial organization. To understand the magnitude of that financial organization, it's like they've been running on 150 plus projects at any point of a time, handling close to 500 million of investment in projects. When the project manager walks in, there was only one simple question being asked. Hey, how much are we investing in digital transformation and in the BAU activities or the legacy transformation? It was that one simple question. But the PMO couldn't answer that immediately. The reason because that the disconnects that we talked about. So how do we solve that problem? When we walked into that financial organization, all we did was that we started figuring it out, what are the total projects and programs that has been running on. we looked at the strategy office initiatives. We looked at the top core strategic pillars. We aligned them, the different buckets, and measured the value metrics in terms of how are we going to measure the success of the project. So literally, we looked at the corporate strategy, the pillars, and how are we going to measure the value? Literally what more ask us to do. And we tried to connect that with the programs and portfolios. So the result was that we've been talking about 500 million of investment. And when we did this mapping, we realized that it's just 30% of your projects or investments connecting onto the strategic priorities. And for them, there were 5 strategic pillars at the top. And most importantly, even though that is 30% connection, the very topmost strategic priority, it was only getting 5% of the total investment. And I was like, don't joke me around, right? Wherein you said that's your top strategic priority, and you say like only 5% of the total 500 million is getting on to your market expansion. You're crazy about it, right? And then you look at the other aspect, 50% goes on in terms of your legacy systems maintenance. And this is where it rings the bell for the leadership team saying that, you know what, we've been thinking about, we've been doing innovation, we've been doing transformation, but are you saying that we have been spending 50% of your budget just on keeping the lights on, right? And most revealing shock was that the rest 20%. It doesn't contribute to any of the strategic alignments, which means the 2 trillion that you talked about, so 20% out of the 500 million, the 100 million is something which has been getting unaccounted. So when we present that stuff to the leadership team, that helped them to literally realign their entire portfolio. The 100 million, which is not supposed to get in for this current year, got redirected to the next year, right? So that's precisely what we did. So we looked at all the programs and portfolios over here. We aligned with the corporate strategy. For value metrics, we used a framework like OKRs, but you can also do balanced scorecard, you can do Hoshin country, you can do MBOs, whatsoever you want. And the key is in connecting them together just to understand where you fit on, right? Now, the same question, what are we investing on? Digital transformation or on legacy systems? As a PM, you can go in and tell that, hey, you know what? We have been investing 120 million in digital transformation, right? That's the very first transformation that you are going to bring on the table. So it's not just a concept, it's not just an aspirational theory. That's the true power of strategic alignment, getting you a visibility in terms of where is your spending on. That's just an answer to the very first office, right? The strategy office. As a PM, as a value-focused delivery manager, you just cannot deal only with the strategy office. If you go on to the second room and knock the door, you're going to get the same question again. What are we investing on? Digital transformation. But this time, the question is going to get asked not by the strategy office, it's going to get asked by the financial office. The CFO office is going to ask you, and when they ask you the same question, the same answer that you answered for strategy office is not going to surface out, right? The problem is that when Corrado mentioned the capitalization part of it, it should be easy for you to know that how much we have been capitalizing our expenses, right? Why is it important? When you make a statement saying that I'm going to invest 15 million on digital transformation this year, you need to know how much you are capitalizing it. What's your CapEx? What's your OpEx? Why is it important? Because it helps me understand, is it going to hit my balance sheet or is it going to hit my P&L immediately? What is the impact to my EBITDA this year? I'm answerable to my investors and board. And that's what your CFO office needs. And when you go back and say that I'm investing 15 million on digital transformation, you're going to say that, okay, fair enough, we are not going to buy with that. You will not get an approval for the projects, right? So how do we solve this next problem? When you invest, when you bring in SPM element to this flavor, right, you also need to get a next level visibility about where is that money going on. not just at the portfolio level. You really need to go down all the way to the programs, to the projects, to the CapEx of every line item. And that's precisely what we did, again, as part of the SPM exercise. So the same question without SPM. When the question was asked, when a project manager said, we are investing 15 million in digital transformation, I switched role. Now I have SPM enabled. What are you investing on digital transformation? You know what? We got 15 million going to get invested in digital transformation, out of which 10 million goes as part of a capitalized assets, which is going to get capitalized at a discounted rate of 10% over the next 5 years. 3 million we're going to expense for this year, and out of which 1 million is going to hit the P&L this quarter, 2 million is going to get expensed over the rest of the year, and our portfolio would look at an ROI rate of 28%, payback of 2.8 years, and 94% strategically aligned. That's not a project update anymore. You have been giving a pretty strategic financial briefing to your CFO office. And that's what your CFO stakeholders will be looking at it. So as a PM, you are not supposed to say that, okay, my project has been going on well. The same question has a different meaning when people, whomsoever the stakeholders are asking that question, right? When the CSO or the strategy office asked, we said, we have been investing 15 million on the digital transformation projects, whatsoever is strategically aligned. But when the same question is being asked by the CFO office, the answer differs, right? That's the power of MORE and SPM. You're really talking about the value. We're really talking about what value means to each of the stakeholders over here, right? Now, we are successfully done with answering 2 of the doors. Let's knock on the 3rd door, wherein the team being waiting on is the PMO office. We successfully transformed, looking at the strategy office, the CFO office, and now it's PMO office. But the question remains the same, right? What are we investing on? Digital transformation or BAUs? And as mentioned, the same question, different stakeholder, which means it calls for a different answer. When the same question is asked by this stakeholder, it means that they're looking out for, are we staying relevant? It means, yeah, you've done a pretty good job as a project manager looking out your strategic alignment, doing all the investment decisioning, but that was done 6 months back, a year back. Are you still staying relevant? And you know what? We got hit by COVID, right, probably 5 years back, and we really need to reassess our situations. You cannot go back and say that, I'm going to do this rebalancing in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And that's the reality at the moment now. When you do not have any supporting tools to do that, the real-time scenario, when you have to reassess, what does it mean to take for me to tell that I'm going to stop my investment in portfolio A and redirect to portfolio B? What does it mean for me to tell that the kind of resources that I need to have on to do that realignment? And believe me, that takes weeks and weeks of preparation at the moment now. And even for COVID, the curfew got enforced in a maximum of 48 hours. So you cannot say that I will be doing this, solving this problem for you in 2 weeks. You really need to do that in hours and minutes, not really in weeks. And that's precisely we've been talking about, all those dynamic scenario modeling. And again, if you recollect that, the scenario modeling is one of the pointers that Corrado mentioned in the previous session. Right? So you need to look at the kind of capabilities that you need to have that will make this happen for you. So when you look at it, you should be able to have a kind of a dynamic resource allocation capability. That should tell that where my resources are going on. I should be able to model that and tell that when I reassess, what does my conservative growth look like? What does my aggressive growth look like? And what will happen if I divert some of my existing portfolios or investment into something else? And that all needs to happen. And that's why we say the scenario modeling needs to happen in minutes, not in weeks. So that's the reality the organizations are facing. You really need to be dynamic enough. You need to be equipped. Yeah, AI is one thing, but what is that something which can help me to make all these decisions so pretty straight, quick forward, right? So what does it mean to tell that? Again, when the PMO office asks this question, hey, we're gonna reallocate this $10 million budget from portfolio A to portfolio B, which will help me to get the X amount of resources being freed up, and that's something which I'm going to reallocate it in this project just because that this will help me to move the current strategic business needle wherein we have been focusing on, say, pointless delivery. You should be able to connect all these dots together, not just in terms of resource management, not just in terms of financial modeling, but also in terms of the benefits that you're going to get, the value-driven benefits out of it. And that's the portfolio flexibility, right? So we answered all these three core stakeholders in this timeline, and it's time to look at the results. I did the project, and let me share you one example. We worked with one of a tech company, and it was more of a new CRM launch product, and they were trying to be really happy or nice with their customers, and the sprint velocity reports, all the typical project delivery reports, all looking so awesome. After 6 months of the project, they also had a pretty good project success party out, and a month after the project delivery, the CPO was asking it, okay, we did that project on CRM launch. Are our customers really happy? Did it move the needle of CSAT? The problem was that nobody was tracking about, yeah, we track the success of the project metrics in terms of CPI, SPIs, velocity, whatsoever it is, but we never tracked whether does it really solve the business problem or not. And that's where we've been talking about the value realization. The core traditional project management, you're all so much mounted on earned value management, EVM, which talks about the variance, talks about the budget, talks about CPI, SPI, things like that, right? However, the true benefits comes in measuring the outcomes, not in the output. And when you have to measure the outcome, the transformation that we need to take is moving away from earned value management to business value management. And when you mark them together, when you align them together, EVM plus BVM, that's what it is going to help you measure the true return on investment. So a simple example, if you simply going by the book of records in terms of purely measuring the project management metrics, my success is going to get buried just in measuring these metrics alone, right? Worst case scenario for Agile, we're going to talk about what's my burn-down chart, a sprint burn-down chart will look like. Or best case scenario, I'll be looking at, I've been able to say that the golden triangle of project management, I've been maintaining it so perfectly. But believe me, that's not it is going to help me in driving towards the actual business needle. So you really need to map it out with the core business metrics, why you have been doing this project. Remember the very first slide that we talked about the strategic alignment? As part of doing the mapping with your projects, you are supposed to define your value metrics. In the words of Soyon yesterday, in the MORE framework, that's nothing but defining your project success criteria. And that needs to happen as part of defining the value metrics. So now I can say that, hey, I talked about the new market expansion. The project is successful, but is it truly successful from a business standpoint? Well, yeah, we did a 2 million market expansion. I had a project about introducing a new manufacturing line. Well, yeah, project went well. I've been able to achieve the OEE effectiveness. The CRM project example that I talked about, helping me to measure the CSAT or the time to market, right? So always tap along with the value metrics, these two, along with the benefits realization. Just because that, in many cases, the projects probably have a timeline of 1 year, 2 years, but that the benefits realization will get accrued beyond the project completion period. So the key is in maintaining everything strategically aligned and connected together, and you will be able to move on further. So combining all these things, this is the framework that we have been talking about, which will help us to bring all these things out. And now if you wonder, okay, now that's a big amount of things, how do we gonna make it happen? Probably 5 years back, we might need a team of consultants to do it, or you might be thinking that, okay, let me hire Nethaji to do it, right? Jokes apart. But this is the AI era. You really do not need any additional manpower to do it. You are only should be smart enough to tell that the solution that I choose to solve these problems should be having these native AI capabilities. And that's what we are building in Profit. So not only solving for this 2 trillion problem, we are solving this problem so efficiently without adding any cost to the project management by having multiple multimodal agents within the solution. So the next time when a strategy office asks a question, so that's something you'll be seeing it as part of the alignment agent. It will tell you that, okay, hey, 10% of your projects are not aligned, or you have a spend of 50 million unaccounted. So that's a kind of setup that you need to have it on. So put across everything together. So 4 disconnects, the 4 problem statements. We have 4 solution tenets that comes in terms of how are we going to solve that problem. And when you do step by step, I would say the very first immediate benefit that you'll be getting it on, easily you'll be able to identify 15 to 20% of projects that are not contributing to your top-level strategy. And you'll be able to give a pretty good decisioning about where do you need to invest on. Help to understand where's my money going on and how am I going to get it back. Number 3, in terms of ability to rebalance myself with respect to the market potential and dynamics. And lastly, about talking to the core in terms of the value-driven benefits. In a nutshell, the future of product portfolio project management is not just about managing the projects better. It's just to ensure that every dollar, every hour, every resource that we've been spending on, ensure that it gets allocated towards what truly value matters. And that's the power of SPM. All right, thank you so much.